live.
All right, we're live.
That's okay.
Yep, I just got the notification that you went live, so great.
Oh, and here you are. Cool.
Perfect.
All right, we'll wait a couple of minutes as people join.
Yeah.
We had a beautiful fall day finally in Seattle. Same in Portland.
Yeah, it was fine. Yesterday was a little rainy, but today was it was very fall. It's been fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
Seattle tricks me. It like plays games with me because it will be like cold and rainy and bitter, and I'll be like, I have to get out of here. And then it will have like this beautiful fall day, and I'll be like, oh, I love it here. And you get tricked into staying in the Midwest.
I don't know if this happens up in Seattle. Here we have this like our meteorologists come out with like the most doom and gloom 10-day where they're just like, it's 10 days of solid rain and it's going to be 25 degrees. And then the closer you get to the start of the 10 days, they like scale it way back and they go, well, 3 of the days it'll rain. It's going to be 48 degrees. It's not going to be so bad, actually. So people like, did you see the 10-day for next week? It's going to be awful. And then like by Monday, they go, so I guess it's actually kind of fine.
My joke about Seattle's meteorologists is that they just have like a lot of pictures of rain on the wall and they throw a dart at one of them any given day. And they'll say light showers, chance of rain. It may rain, a little rain likely. And it's just like whichever rain forecast they pick that day is what is what. And then sometimes it's just not that at all. You just really can't count on it.
Oh, no.
Well, welcome to people who are joining. We have a couple people here, and then this will be available to watch later as recorded videos. So anyone who misses the beginning or all of it can watch it later on, I think, both of our channels. So I'm Emily. I write the Cholent, which is Seattle's only Jewish newsletter. And like it says, I write about Jewish issues and how Jews in Seattle are affected by various things. And today we're talking about politics because we have an election on Tuesday, and we're going to be electing our mayor, a couple of city council members, a bunch of school board positions, and a whole bunch of other things. And we're not going to get into all the details about that election. Please read, if you're in Seattle or Greater Seattle or even outside of that, read my last week's post, who Jews should vote for on November 4th. I'm not saying you should vote for anybody. That's your choice. But it's about 3 voters' guides and who they think you should vote for. And all 3 of them come to very similar conclusions about who you should vote for based on what's been happening in Seattle for the past couple of years, both in regards to post-October 7th anti-Semitism and attacks and harassment of Jews, and also like it's all tied up with like, the post Black Lives Matter and COVID and, police protests and things like that, and how that affects the security and safety of our community. And I am very happy to introduce Max Steele of Recalibrate Portland, our sister city down there. Although I often say that Seattle, Portland is in a really different place than Seattle, even though we're only 3 hours apart. Seattle, I feel like, corrected itself from some really far left socialist leaning policies after COVID and sort of swung back to the middle. There's a lot of swinging in Seattle. It's a big pendulum. We go left. We never go right, but we go kind of center left to far left. That's the swing. And I love reading your Substack newsletters about Portland. They're really first of all, they're just really well written, really well researched, and give me insight into sort of how we relate to each other as cities, and what maybe Seattle can start to expect, because we have on the ballot a mayoral candidate, the incumbent Bruce Harrell, who is sort of a centrist, depending on who you talk to and what their definitions are. And then we have a socialist leaning candidate, Katie Wilson. And because of how much work you do writing about socialism in Portland and how it affects the local politics, but also how deeply entrenched the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, is with anti-Zionism. That's something I really want to get into and understand how it could end up affecting Seattle if Seattle could end up going in the direction of Portland. So anyway, I'll let you talk for a second. Welcome, Max.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I mean, so your Substack is explicitly Jewish and not particularly political. My Substack is entirely political, and incidentally, it ends up being Jewish because I'm Jewish, and a lot of this stuff is alarmingly overlapping at the moment. There's that kind of need to not just view politics in terms of which of these things is actually going to be effective, like who are these people, how did they get into these positions, but also what does this mean for Jews in Portland, what does it mean for Jews in Seattle or around the country or around the world. um I have readers who I'm sure would love me to never, ever, ever talk about Zionism again because they're like, oh, here it comes. But I don't get that choice
Mhm.
because of the Democratic Socialists of America, because of the DSA. I mean, their North Star is Israel, or specifically is anti-Israel activism. So they find a way to insert it into every issue. Anti-immigration, actions taken by the federal government become issues about Israel. Uh, they find a way to make traffic fatalities somehow. This is probably Israel. Yeah.
I just saw a parody clip of Zohar Mamdani, and how, he blamed police brutality on, what did he say? The food of the NYPD is laced with
When
the 80s. How did it go?
when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, remember that it was laced by the IDF.
Right, classic conspiracy theory. Jews are
Yeah.
behind it, and they want to kill you. Um, and I saw a parody clip where someone was imitating him and going off about, like, when I see homeless people, I just think of the displaced Palestinians and how Israel causes homelessness in New York City. Israel causes the education crisis. That kind of obsession with Israel, I think maybe we'll just start there because you have so many external links in your articles to, like, your sources where this is very clear. And I think this actually could be a good place to start because you can't talk about the direction of the DSA and what the socialist candidates believe, whether that's the top of their list or the maybe somewhere in the middle or bottom. That anti-Zionism has really become a tenet of the socialist platform. Um, you know, there's a long story about kind of how that happened, and I think there's a lot we don't know about how that happened. But actually, why don't you just jump in and talk about, like, what's the high level read? Because cause I don't think I really understood it. And if I didn't, I guess some other people don't understand it either.
Yeah.
How did the DSA become so attached to the idea of anti-Zionism?
I mean, you're right that there's like a long, long version of the story, but the
Yeah.
high point is that, I mean, the DSA was founded by Michael Harrington, who was a liberal Zionist. So sometimes when I'm talking to older Americans, kind of the old hippies, part of the new left, they really remember the DSA as like a really cuddly, pro-peace, pro-union, and even Zionist group, right? So they're very resistant to this idea that, oh, the DSA is anti-Semitic. What do you mean by that, Max? Well, in around 2012, but at a much, much higher pitch in 2015, 2016, anti-Zionists moved into the DSA. Essentially, they used the Bernie Sanders like momentum to rebuild the DSA. The DSA at that point had fallen in membership to under 100,000 members. The average age of a member was like 69 or 70 years old. I mean, it was an adorable little fringe political group. It's not really a political party yet. But they they moved in. They signed up in huge mass. They took over the party. And by 2016, they already began kind of rolling out their pro BDS resolutions at the national level. Just this last year, or this year, they finally passed their a fighting anti-Zionist DSA pledge, which is a purge of Zionists from the party. You are now expected to be anti-Zionist, and if you are found not just to be a Zionist, but if you are insufficiently anti-Zionist, the party is to purge you. They're to revoke all endorsements and banish you from the party, which
Yeah, where
is
have
a
we heard that before?
yeah, it's a pretty shocking. It's not really very precedented in U.S. politics. I'm not aware of a lot of ideological purges. I mean, especially along religious or ethnic, or it's pretty shocking, and it didn't get. It got reported. It didn't get reported at the volume it probably should have been reported at.
Yeah.
That's why we're seeing a little late. These groups of rabbis come forward, groups of Jewish communities come forward kind of in the 11th hour of a lot of these races and say, oh, hey, by the way, this BDS anti-Zionism stuff is really, really scary. And it's not peace activism, by the way.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a great segue into the Federation's letter. So, I would love for you to kind of fill us in about what happened with the DSA meeting that ended up kicking out a member of the Jewish local press in Portland. And let's
Sure.
just keep in mind that Jews are very, very small percentages of our populations.
Yeah.
It's not like, you've heard too much of, like white Christian men. It's like this is a very tiny, and that also wouldn't be okay, to silence anybody. But, this is a very small group of people. And what was really wild is how the Federation director in Portland really came out swinging from that, which is something I think a lot of Jews are a little frustrated about because so many Jewish nonprofits, they are nonprofits and they can't come out in political they they don't want to look like they're ever endorsing or not endorsing or opposing a candidate or it's doing anything political. They're very nervous about that. And that leaves now they're right, they're legally to do that. But that leaves a lot of their constituents saying, like, who is helping us out here? Like, someone needs to stand up to this. And I know in Seattle, that's been a frustration. It's why we have two new political action committees that never existed before in Seattle. We have Washingtonians for a Brighter Future and the Kids Table.
Yeah.
Both of them launched this year yes, hearts to them. They basically got fed up with nobody really, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm putting down our organizations because they do incredible work, but they just do different work. There's advocacy, there's education, there's fundraising for certain causes, and they're sending people to camps, sending people to Israel. They're doing a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
but that people a lot of Jews after October 7th in our liberal cities and all over the place really felt like who is standing up for us, who is fighting for this. And so can you kind of give an overview of what happened there?
Yeah, so our local DSA city councilors decided to bring that kind of fighting anti-Zionist BDS resolution home to Portland. They signed on to a pledge. So kind of a non-binding pledge. They got half of our city council to sign it, promising to investigate the manufacture and transportation of weapons to Israel within the city of Portland, which is something, aside from that very scary statement of investigating Portlanders for trade with a foreign ally, I'm not sure even happens in the first place. Additionally, there were a bunch of other points. They were going to essentially, they're hunting for complicity in Israel's policies, which is pretty chilling. It's a naked BDS pledge. It's a pledge to begin spending city money and resources hunting down dual loyalty in the citizens and businesses here. There's not really a better way to frame it. So they had a press conference. This is Zoom press conference. It was a virtual press conference, and Portland's only Jewish newspaper, the Jewish Review, sent their only reporter, again, to your point of being a really small percentage of the population, Rockney Roll, to the press conference. He signed in and was almost immediately kicked out of the room and not allowed back in. So this triggered a bunch of news stories where they kept changing their story. Oh, somebody saw his name, Rockney Roll. That's kind of an odd name. Maybe they thought it was a troll, but then Rockney came forward with the evidence of, no, I didn't put in my name. I put in my press credentials. It said the Jewish Review on it. Oh, well, maybe it was a technical glitch, or maybe one of our volunteers wasn't properly trained, but definitely we didn't kick out the only Jewish reporter on purpose. We would never do that. We're so pro-democracy. And now they've just kind of tried to ignore the story. this didn't go well for them optically. I think they thought it was going to either fly under the radar. They had the press conference the day before the No Kings March. So they just like slid the press conference in the middle of a Friday, right before a giant march, and thought, there's no way anybody's going to remember this even happened. The kicking out of Rockne was, I mean, a huge PR flub. Sort of thankfully. I mean, I feel bad for him. I talked to him. I like the guy. But I'm kind of happy that it happened because it showed exactly the type of people that they are and how they operate. It was the only reason it ended up in the news on Monday morning. But even that weekend, the Saturday, I had an older Jewish woman come up to me the next week and say, Max, I went to that No Kings March. And the DSA candidates gave their speeches, and they were supposed to be anti-Trump speeches. They just talked about Palestine the whole time and just tried to interlace every single issue with Palestine. And she said, that's not what I went for. I was kind of on the verge of tears because they're doing all this BDS stuff. And I'm looking around and there's cafes everywhere. And I thought, I'm here to stand with my immigrant neighbors. I'm here to march against the president. Yeah, she was pretty shocked. I think that, to your point about the Jewish Federation, I don't want to categorize them as like finally waking up. They've been awake the whole time, but you're right. They're limited in what they can do. They're sort of better served perhaps not burning bridges with certain organizations and trying to work from inside slowly. But this was a bridge too far, right? This necessitated a statement and a condemnation. I sent an email to all of my city councilors who didn't participate, asking them to condemn it. They gave a varying soft kind of, we think this is ugly and a distraction, but no one really came out and said, full stop.
Yeah.
This is unacceptable. So we're still kind of living in a situation here in Portland where the DSA got away with it, right? It was a little controversial. People got mad online. The Jewish Federation commented, but they're sitting relatively happy in their offices. There's no consequences for this.
Right. There's an important question in the chat that's why do Democrats let DSA people run as Democrats? I think we know the answer, but I actually would love to hear you talk a little bit about this if you want, and about the strategy of the DSA to use these lower positions to force their ideas through.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can be a little mean and say that the Democratic brand is a little spent right now. There's not a lot of really exciting energy coming out of Democrats, but there is this new and fiery populist, very post-Bernie Sanders, young, energetic movement, which is heavily attached to the DSA. And I think the Democrats for several years saw this as a way to like innervate the party, like re-energize things. And they weren't paying attention to what the DSA says when they go on a podcast where they said, oh, no, we're using the Democrats as an incubator for our own party. We're going to peel off a certain number and we're going to abandon the husk. We hate the Democrats. They're just another brand of fascist to us at the end of the day, but they're closer to us than the Republicans. So yeah, we're happy to use their resources, use their money, and grow sort of from inside. This isn't really like edgy conspiracy stuff. They're really, really straightforward about this. I think just like with the Jewish Federation, I'm now having conversations with leadership of labor unions who are saying, Max, I'm pretty sure they're using my labor union as like an incubator to grow their own thing. I think they're just going to, I don't think they're good for us. And I'm saying, yeah, I know. I've been yelling that for years. Yes, definitely they're bad for you. So people are waking up to the idea that this was always the plan. It was I say always, this was the plan since about 2016. So a decade. They've been very naked about it. And I think now we have to look to the Democratic Party, and ask that question to them of, are you still going to let them run as Dems? Really? Are you really still going to let them? Because they're primarying you now. From inside the party, they're primarying you.
We saw the years ago when the Democratic Party tried to derail Bernie Sanders' candidacy to keep Hillary on track, and that was sort of a scandal. It was like,
Sure.
it felt like voter suppression intervention that really wasn't right or fair. Then also, you know, yes, I think that the Democrats are like, we'll take anyone we can get, and they've really turned. What I noticed in the Seattle elections. So a lot of Democrats, mainstream moderates, who were pretty good for the city. They kind of like didn't like crime. It's not. It doesn't take a lot here. Just like
Yeah.
maybe we should put people in jail once in a while if they do really
Sure.
bad things. Getting away with shoplifting up to $900, maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe we shouldn't block off entire neighborhoods and force the police station to have to evacuate and let young Black kids die on the streets of gunshot wounds. Like,
Hmm.
maybe that wasn't a great plan. So they kind of pulled it back. But what we saw in the primary in August was a lot of those more moderate candidates who just basically wanted basic safety. We saw them get primaried by the far left
Yeah.
in many cases. Um, and I think that, yes, like, I think that will be a wake up call for the mainstream people. And again, like, people like us, we see it coming. You especially, you see it coming. Other people don't see it coming. And for a long time, people like us feel really crazy because we're like,
Yeah.
doesn't anyone see that this is weird? And they don't until eventually they do. And eventually the New York Times will write, this is my theory. Eventually the New York Times will write a story about like the thing I've been saying for 5 years. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, the New York Times read this article. Did you read it? Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
so the New York Times like legitimizes the trend, and then everyone can sort of like reorient, but it takes until then when you're ahead of the curve. That can be frustrating. And also, I think, that, oh yeah, so a big part of the primary, they got, a lot of these moderates got primaried, but what we're seeing in like all the campaign pitches now are people saying, the Democrats saying, I mean, first of all, everyone's a Democrat in Seattle. Like, when I say
Yeah.
Democrats, I just mean left or center. Um, we see the people that are further to the left who are running against the center of the left saying, well, like they're like vying for the most anti-Trump position. And I think that a lot of these moderates got primaried because they because of the national energy, which is silly because Seattle's a blue city, Washington's a blue state. Like, it's probably not going to change for a while,
Sure.
and if ever. And there was like this energy, this anti-Trump energy kind of took over. Like, we have to go as far left as possible to get these MAGAs out when there's no MAGAs in sight.
Yeah.
Not between Bellingham and Olympia, where all these races are taking, where many of these races are taking place.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, and also I think the Democrats are. I wonder if they just sort of don't get it yet sometimes. What do you think? Like, because you see some of them are like leftist adjacent, and they don't quite want to say what they think yet because they'll get in too much trouble. But some of them, but others are like, oh, I kind of didn't see that coming. The ones that are getting primaried.
Yeah. I mean, I think, gosh, I think there's a couple of factors here, right? So closed primary states, Oregon suffers from this. You can have a Janelle Bynum. So she is Oregon's first Black Congress member, right? I'm a big fan of Janelle Bynum. I really like her. From an electability standpoint, she is deeply electable. She's an easy to vote for candidate, but she's very moderate in her liberalism. I mean, she's progressive on issues, but there's other stuff she's just very kind of pragmatic on. It's easy inside a closed primary to attack her because she's not sufficiently progressive. But the problem is if you manage to primary her, which is the plan, by the way, whoever primaries her successfully has to go up against a Republican in a swing district that goes both ways quite alternately. A DSA member is going to lose that race, right? And so there's that issue, which is the long-term effects of this are going to be that a lot of our swing districts go back Republican, regardless of how people feel about that. It's a terrible strategy for Democrats to allow that to happen. I mean, the other end is, yeah, the DSA especially is very, very good at not running on the crazy stuff. I mean, once
Yep.
they're in their own meetings, they're on their own podcasts, they're going to unload. They'll be really, really honest. But Mitch Green, the DSA counselor in my district, ran on unions, affordability, small businesses, and public safety. He has done nothing to support those things and instead has been promoting social housing, higher taxes at every opportunity, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, you know, and then a lot of anti-Trump stuff, which fine, but I don't know why you need to spend time on the city council when Portland is in a bit of a crisis. We desperately need you um, to be focusing. The Hill recently put out a piece, accusing quite correctly the DSA of wanting to take the focus away from potholes to Palestine. And I really liked that phrase because we really have a lot of potholes
Yes.
and we
Yeah.
have no Palestine. There is no Palestine currently happening in Portland, right? It's bleak, but again, they run on healthcare access and climate equity and really easy things to get behind,
Yeah.
which are ironically also the things that the more centrist Democrats are running on as well. Like you said, there's no MAGA candidate. It's just Kamala Harris versus AOC. For some reason, nobody's settling for the Kamala Harris. They're like, no, we want a little bit of that AOC. Oh wait, why is she trying to make a city bank and kick Xfinity out? Well, what's going on? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, segue to Seattle, and we have our mayor in the primary came in, our incumbent. Now people aren't super happy with him, but he's pretty moderate, and he came in pretty far behind the socialist person who came kind of out of nowhere. Katie Wilson, is she leads the Transit Riders Union. I don't think anyone has heard of this. We don't. Please, if you're here and you know you're what like more than I do, please put in the chat and educate everybody. I do not know what the Transit Rider is or does. I even read an article from the Seattle Times that what is the Transit Riders Union? Clearly, other people had that question, and I still didn't really get the answer after reading the article. I mean, well, okay, so leave that. Leave be that
Well,
what it is. Yeah, go ahead, Max.
yeah, well, I mean, so the DSA here is they run heavily on transit issues as well. The problem is, I mean, a lot of them don't actually take transit. If they do, it's very much by choice. They tend to be fairly wealthy,
Yeah,
but they run on like better transit, more transit. And then the moment that TriMet, which is our public corporation which handles transit, wants to reintroduce, shockingly, police to transit, say when there's violence, the DSA is the first group to come out and go, whoa, 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 no, no, no. Nobody wants that. We want way more trains. We don't want police on any of the trains. That you can't enforce fares on the trains. That's
right.
violence. And so again, it's the run on transit, which I'm huge on transit. I would be running on transit for sure. But I would also acknowledge that the MAX, which is our light rail train, in 2023, 2024 was pretty scary. It's gotten a lot better, but it's gotten a lot better because TriMet has brought more security on board and they've taken concrete steps to make it safer, not through waiving fares for everybody and just kind of hoping, if we love transit enough, it'll be safe.
Right, right. Yeah, I could go on and on about transit. I'm also a big supporter of transit, but in a place like Seattle, it's very hard. It costs billions of dollars, and the costs go up all the time. Then a contractor, if something goes wrong, and then they have to kind of redo the project. That costs billions more. It won't be open for another 25 years. And then we have a bunch of hills and rain and dark, and it's hard to get. And there's no parking. There's I could go
Yeah.
on and on about this. I used to ride the light rail every day to when I worked into downtown Seattle. And during COVID, it definitely got pretty sketchy. So we have this woman who's the head of this transit riders union. Now, KUOW, our local NPR affiliate, did a really great story on her, which I link in the show notes if I remember to add this later. But it kind of made her look like, it kind of gave her this like gauzy hero look. It was called something like Katie Wilson can't afford to live in Seattle. That's why she's running for mayor. Now, then you read the story, and as a journalist, I have this sort of like sick habit of I like to read articles to find out when the real story comes out. Like, in
Mhm.
which paragraph of the story are you gonna get the actual story? But this one actually pretty close to the top. It was clear, that she actually and her husband don't have jobs. They She's the head of a union. It's not clear. She said she didn't and again, I don't wanna, come across with wrong information here, so I'll just put out what I recall, and everyone else can read the article themselves. But sh it looks like she gets money from the Transit Writers Union, but then she says she didn't get money from the Transit Writers Union, and then she said, "Well, there must have been a mistake." Now, if you're in charge of finances for any kind of organization, you can't make mistakes. That could be a criminal offense.
Yeah.
You can't just like, "Oh, I put the revenue in the wrong thing on the spreadsheet." No, like, that stuff should be pretty locked down.
Yeah.
So she doesn't know how much she makes. She doesn't talk about how much she makes. We don't know how much she makes, and we don't know if she's actually cooking the books.
I mean,
And
let's be clear.
yeah,
He knows how much she makes.
you are right.
Unless
Thank
you are
you.
fabulously wealthy, you know how much you make,
Okay,
but
so
that's
to
fine.
my
Okay.
next point, yes, you're right about that. Thank you for that clarification. To my next
Okay.
point, so how does she make her money? She
Okay.
gets checks from her, wait for it, parents. She's 43 years old. She
Yep.
gets money from her parents, who are professors out in New York, and she doesn't know. She says she doesn't know how much she gets per month.
So it's a lot.
So, so it's a lot or something very sketchy,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Either
yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And her husband, her child is in daycare, which costs $2,200 a month. Her rent in a one-room apartment costs about the same amount. And she and her husband wanted to start an in-home bakery, but then decided not to, and so he doesn't have a job. So and correct me if I'm wrong, listeners and readers and whoever's out there, but from my just reading the news. Now, this is not me going into conspiracy theories. She doesn't she's getting money she says she does not know how much money she's getting from her parents, from a union. Her husband doesn't work, and she's running on a socialist platform. She's running on this, we need to all share, capitalism's unfair,
Yeah.
um we all need to, she's running on a socialist platform, which to me, if I were actually a socialist, would be like a little fraudulent. I'd say this doesn't quite sound right. Like, if I really have socialist values, I'd say this doesn't sound like the kind of socialist that I want to support.
Well, you'd think that. You'd think that.
Huh.
I mean, I run backgrounds on our local socialists, and it's often astounding. I usually find one of two things. I almost always find one of two things. One, they're very wealthy,
Yeah.
or two, they don't exist because the name that they are using in organizing is to obfuscate their real identity, not usually for like they're wanted on crime somewhere, but because if you knew their real last name, you would find out they're even wealthier than the people that are being upfront about who they are. You'd find out, oh, great, your parents are Dartmouth professors. That's really lovely for you, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of shocking. I got in an argument about statistics. The DSA sent one of their statistics guys after me, and we had a friendly little debate. And just for fun, I looked up how much he made a year. He's not quite cracking 200K just on his own, right? I mean, these are very disproportionately well-off people. So that tends to be who the socialists are. Zoran Mamdani, great example, right? Again, where never really held a real job,
Yeah.
kind of the child of privilege. This stuff sort of makes sense.
So I can see how a moderate would not take this um, opposition seriously, and I mean, poor Bruce Harrell. I say poor just because I think it's so pathetic what he has to kind of deal with. Not because I necessarily feel bad for him as a politician. You got to play the game, but like,
Yeah.
he sent out a mailer that had his resume on one side, which was detailed, and then the other side had her resume that he'd gotten from some source, and it had no experience on it. And that's literally what he had to do. to put it out there, like, this person has no experience.
Yeah.
Um, and she might still win. Like, people don't care
Uh, uh,
about that.
that's it. That's the issue.
Yeah,
Um, it's the shocking lack of care.
yeah.
Or they say, "Yeah, oh gosh, who Jacobin?" Somebody put out a oh, no, no, sorry, it was Ken Klippenstein put out a piece recently, and he was talking about the secret of Zoran Mamdani's secret, and his secret was that it doesn't matter that he can't deliver on any of his promises. The secret is that people don't care, they just wanna hope, and that socialism, a better world is possible. It's a very Obama hope kind of vibe,
Nailed it.
but it I don't really care for Klippenstein's writing. I think he's too close to the far left subjects he writes about. He's a good writer. I want to be really clear. He's very skilled at writing. Um, but he was kind of very like a little bit crazy of like, it doesn't matter. Can he make transit free? No, probably not. Is he going to freeze the rents? No, no, it's not going to freeze the rents. But it feels really good to think about these things. It feels really good to feel like you live in a city where you want to freeze the rents.
I remember reading or hearing something years ago about when you plan a vacation, it's not the vacation that actually makes you feel good when you go there. It's the planning of the vacation that brings you more
Sure.
joy and excitement and peace. I mean, it's similar, right? Like
Yeah.
we the hope is more important than the reality, and we just kind of we just keep doing the same things over and over again, and there's no change. I mean, if anything, things get worse.
So
Yeah.
So in behavior change science, because that's something that I do, we worry about like the other end of things, which is the person who consistently talks about all the ways in which they're going to change, uh, they're going to improve. They never do any of the things,
Yeah.
but it's really nice to be the kind of person who's planning on improving their lives. That's actually really dangerous like if somebody has a habit that is shortening their life, if somebody is miserable in behavior change, we're very wary about that pattern of thinking. But yeah, in politics, people go, I like being the kind of person who would vote for somebody who would think about starting a committee to look at solving poverty.
Right.
Uh, I like being the kind of person that would go volunteer at a soup kitchen just for my 2 cents, like maybe do something. But
We do something.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Katie Wilson. What was I going to say about her? Um, Now, oh yeah, the one other zinger that was also, which really kind of hit home, was how in one of the debates she said she was asked whether she would whether she believed that people should be able to sleep in tents in parks. And now you could have a nuanced answer to that. I think a politician who's savvy would, even if they believed you should be able to sleep in parks, they might say, well, we have a plan in my committee, and
yeah,
we're going to raise funds, and even if you're going to tax, maybe people don't want to give about taxes, but like we're going to tax the wealthy, and we're going to give all that money, and we're going to. She didn't say that. She said, "Pass." I can't. I can't answer that. Like, I'm not going to answer that unless I'm misunderstanding this video of this message. She she doesn't even she doesn't even pretend to have a plan. She's just
yeah,
a person with no opinions, no job, and no experience, who is offering the sort of like facade of a better Seattle. It's just a very strange thing to watch happen.
yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
so, yeah, go ahead.
God. Yeah, it's just a bit. I mean, I don't know. It reminds me of all the slightly smug interviews they did with Trump voters, like post-election, where they didn't get any of the things they thought they were going to get, and they'd go back to these coal miners or the, you know, Muslims in Middle America who voted for Trump, and they were like, "Oh, we're like not happy with anything that he's doing," and you could kind of tell that the journalist was like, "See, I told you," but this is the same thing
Yeah.
with I'm not going to be that smug when these people don't get what they were looking for, because I'm also going to have to be living in these same cities dealing with the potholes not getting filled. And
Right.
it's not that hard to say, No, I don't think people should be allowed to sleep in tents in the public park. And that doesn't mean I want them all jailed for doing so. There's a lot of middle ground between those two things.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So the Seattle DSA does not, from my understanding of things, I don't think they have endorsed her, which I think some people were really hoping for. She has called herself a socialist. She has not said much about Israel. So it doesn't seem that she's really kind of running on this like platform of like getting that sort of anti-Zionist stuff into like
Yeah.
I think the fear in New York is like that's really what Mamdani is going to try to do is like isolate the Jewish community, in these subtle ways. And that's something I wanted to actually mention to go back to an earlier point that we were talking about the Israel strategy. Um, I think a lot of normal people and normal Democrats I think as Americans, we tend not to think about things in terms of religion. We think about class, we think along the lines of, politics and race and economics and all sorts of identity things, but we don't think about religion all that much. I think that there is a big religious component. It's kind of a separate conversation, but what I also notice is that there's this oh, it's just politics. Oh, Israel Palestine. It's just politics. There's people fighting, and like as Whoopi Goldberg said, just white people. That was about the Holocaust. Those white people killing white people. Like
Yeah.
this religious layer and the anti-Semitism that is just below the surface. If we would just peel it back, we'd see it. It's there. The conspiracies. He basically said it out loud that
Yeah.
the IDF is like somehow responsible for police violence in New York. Now, of
Mhm.
course, there are training programs that do work with Israel. Like all conspiracy theories, have some sort of point of origin that you can be like, oh yes, there is a news article and there is a reality to this. I think that's what conspiracy theories are what they are because they have
Sure.
some part of them that is true,
Yeah.
but the rest of it is not.
There's always just the asterisk, right? Of
Yeah.
sure, they also train in a lot of other countries too, but you're just worried
Right.
about this one. Yeah.
Right. And like and our and the influence that another country could possibly have on a city, for a 6-hour training. Like it's all just really silly, but it's exacerbated and blown out of and exaggerated, right? So I think that people don't really understand that level of conspiracy and how deeply it has affected Jewish realities in life throughout time. And each time we go through this, there's some sort of other excuse or some distraction, like, oh, just people fighting. It's just politics. We just need to solve the settlement issue, and this will all go away.
Sure.
And I think that also drives some of these, the Democratic just cluelessness as to what they're supporting.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think this is also where you get into kind of the malicious actors that have invaded these parties. So, at least here in Portland, the current co-chair of the DSA, Olivia Catby, is a long-time anti-Israel activist. Similar to Zoran Mamdani, I can get you clips of her saying, much as he did, the core of my politics is Palestine. I got my start thinking about Palestine. At the end of the day, I'm thinking about Palestine, right? That is the North Star for those individuals. But Olivia Catby is the head. I mean, she's the co-chair of our DSA. She was one of the figures who brought our DSA back from essentially irrelevance. And so, of course, when you look at their platform points, Israel is within the top 3. And if she's being honest, it's the top 1. She believes absurd and insane anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. She's happy to repeat them. But once you get a couple layers down the stack and you get to some, Tiffany Koyama Lane is a city councilor here. She's a former school teacher. I'm sure she probably thinks she isn't repeating anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. She probably thinks she's just an anti-war activist. She cares deeply about human rights issues. Her empathy has been weaponized to a fine point. And she's being steered by a malicious actor who knows exactly what she's doing in Olivia Catby. But you're right, that's the fear with Mamdani, because it's not that he's Muslim. It's not that he's a little too friendly with these groups. It's that you can find clip after clip after clip of him saying, yeah, this is the most important issue of our time.
Yeah.
And I have an absurd and ahistorical view of it.
Right.
That's worrying. Uh,
Yeah. And let's talk about that for a second. Maybe this will be our kind of concluding thought of how again, it sounds conspiratorial, but like how the DSA is sort of planting themselves in these campaigns to do this. And I think it's relevant because we see these candidates who have no experience and no plan, but we know they really hate Israel. And so what are they doing here? I just wanted to follow up on one thing I said about Katie Wilson. I didn't finish. I think the Seattle DSA didn't endorse her because they require candidates to like apply for endorsement.
yes.
So she didn't do that. I mean, so she might be kind of trying to stay away from the DSA. That's probably a good thing, but it doesn't change the fact that she is in the same camp as a lot of people. I don't think she would stand up for the Jewish community if it came down to it. I don't think she'd ever say anything in support of Israel for sure. And I mean, she doesn't, again, like she just doesn't even have a political plan and she's never managed people and she doesn't even know how to do anything or like, she's a total fraud as far as I'm concerned. Right. So, um, we do have a DSA endorsed candidate down in Tacoma and this person, again, doesn't seem to have a whole lot of experience, but definitely is like that. What's really propelling her, I think, in her circles is the anti-Zionism. Of course, she's Jewish, so bonus.
Yeah, great bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the reality is that the DSA is mostly schlubby white guys, but they have to forward every member of the organization that is not a schlubby white guy, right? And this is where you get your Kat Abu-Gazellas. This is where you get your Angelita Murillo in my city. She wasn't originally a DSA member when she ran. She was a far-left TikTok star. She got on city council, and they wooed her. I mean, they needed her because she's an immigrant. She was possibly homeless once. It's a little iffy on the story on that. She's incredibly charismatic. She's photogenic. She's all the things they're looking for to kind of dress up the brand, and she's a true believer in the anti-Zionism stuff, right? She's the kind of person who will post a clip of Rashida Tlaib standing alone in a resolution against Israel, and it'll cut back to her, and there's just a tear running down her cheek because she's like, Rashida stood alone. It's a strange level of passion on this issue, and it's alarming if you know what you're looking at. But again, a lot of liberals don't know what they're looking at. They just think it's kind of nice progressive-y stuff.
Yeah. Or it's sort of fringe, or it's just a conflict that people care about. And like, yeah, people care about conflicts. Like, why do you
Sure.
care about, like, well, how callous are you to not care about
Sure.
conflict? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But to your point of how do we get these candidates? I mean, this is where we start looking at Working Families Party, because the DSA is not a political party. They don't have a presidential line. They can't run candidates, right? Working Families Party is, and the two of them have been very, very tight for the last several years. So that's largely where the money is flowing in from. If you start seeing candidates come out of nowhere, young, fiery, passionate, and the Working Families Party is donating to their campaign and putting a lot of gas behind them, that's your DSA and DSA adjacent candidates. It's going to look like a Working Families Party candidate. We had our largest transfer of out-of-state money a few years ago. It was $750,000-ish. Working Families Party Oregon is a tiny organization. There's barely any people in it. And suddenly there's like $750,000 pouring in one wire transaction to gas up these races. And it made the papers for a couple of days. People went, oh, that's fascinating. There's a lot of East Coast money coming into this race. And people got bored. And I didn't. And I chased down where all of the money went. And it went to a super progressive DA campaign, which they lost. And then all of the rest of the money was divided up and poured into the DSA candidates.
Do we know where that money came from?
So yes, we trace it all the way back. It's billionaire money. It was a combination of, Zuckerberg, actually, of all people, one of the Google guys, and sadly Soros. But like it was just billionaire cash on the East Coast funding progressive orgs, and they just kind of pass that money to the Working Families Party and go, do good with it. And Working Families Party is saying, we know exactly what to do with this money. We'll pour cash into DSA coffers.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is the DSA is not a little fringe organization that will just sort of like go away. They're getting a lot of steam. They are um, they're good at what they do. They're sneaky and they're getting into races. And one of the big things that our local Jewish PACs are focused on is the smaller local races, because that's how that ladder starts. Like if somebody really wild gets into that on that first run, like we have Shama Sawant, who was on the Seattle City Council and introduced a whole bunch of anti-Israel resolutions. And now she's running for Adam Smith's seat in Congress, right?
There
And
we go.
so now he's pretty strong, but who knows? Like, and all of her campaign posters around now, she's not running until next year, but her posters are already around. She's already doing rallies. And people in Seattle are kind of sick of it, like, but this is a bigger race and we don't really know what's going to happen. All of her posters are about like free healthcare, free housing. She's wearing a keffiyeh in all of them. And one of them actually is about like stopping this genocide.
Sure.
Yeah, she's out there, and when she got off the council, they tried to recall her. It was unsuccessful, but it was close. She stayed on the council, then she got off, and everyone was sort of like happy to be done with her. But no,
Sure.
that was actually just the first step. Who knows
That's
what will happen to her? But
yeah. And you're right. That's the look to the small local races. The DSA here started in school boards. They started at the school boards. They went from the school boards to the city council, to the county boards, to House rep, state house, state senate, like, and you watch them kind of crawl the lattice work. But before the school boards, they started in the unions. They showed up to every single strike. They made themselves incredibly useful. I don't want to fault this. This is great strategy. Go do good things and be incredibly useful and get a really great reputation for yourself. But just know, as they climb the system, they're just using every rung. They have no interest in running a school board as anything but, hey, maybe we can get them kind of young. Maybe we can start radicalizing people much younger. Which again, not a conspiracy theory. It's something that they state out loud quite often in public.
yeah, education here is definitely another whole conversation. And I ended up sort of covering the ethnic studies beat for a while, which has quieted down a little bit. But, I fell into it just because I was interested in what happened in California. And I have a bunch of pieces that if people are interested in reading the history of that, you can find them on my Substack. But it came here and people literally didn't know what they were looking at. And I was on a call with a state senator who someone said, oh, you should talk to this person about ethnic studies. And I didn't know how to do it. So I couldn't. So I didn't want to fire hose him with information, but there's no way not to. You got like 30 minutes with this elected official, and you have to tell them about what's going on and give them a big enough of a scare, but also enough that they can swallow it. So I started talking about what actually ethnic studies is. It's not social studies. It's not multiculturalism. It's not just updated for the new millennium. It is an indoctrination campaign using 1970s Third World Liberation Front ideology. They're putting a lot of crazy stuff out there that is anti-Western, and they're using Israel as one of the sort of like components, and they're changing people's identities all around to fit these boxes so they can use them. And Jews in particular were silenced in this. And so when we said, hey, like, this isn't representing, like, this is what happened in California, where this isn't representing the Jewish experience at all, and why are you bringing all this anti-Zionist stuff in here? And they turned around and sort of said, I'm truncating the story by a lot, but like, they turn around and say, Jews, you have like, you're white and you're powerful, and which is a conspiracy theory, right? And not true. And, so you need to stop owning the narrative. Like, you need to stop talking. Like, you own the media already, so stop owning the media already. So, but let us redefine you, and you can't say anything about it. This is essentially what has happened. And another thing that happened that I've written about is after sort of the Black Lives Matter movement started slowing down because, COVID, and because it didn't really accomplish much and people were sort of disillusioned. They were tired of the cities being unsafe as a result of like police, not being able to do their jobs. They needed something new to do. And now this is my theory. It's not, I don't have any kind of smoking gun here, but like after, leading up to October 7th, there was talk in Seattle among some of these ethnic studies leaders. Like, what are we going to do? Like, what's going to be the next George Floyd, right? Like, God forbid there should be another George Floyd, but
Yeah.
we kind of need one, right? Because like, we don't actually want to do the work. We just need like the icon to chase so we can push the agenda forward so we can,
Yeah.
End the colonialist, imperialist, Western civilization. And then what? I don't know. We'll figure it out. It'll be great. We'll have utopia. Well, it'll be great. Don't worry about it. Like, women won't have any rights. Gay people won't have any rights. But don't worry, it's going to be great. We'll solve that problem later. And then after October 7th, they really mobilized. Like, they got super active. And I watched I joined a webinar where they were talking about like, what's the next strategy for us? And like, it was really just putting the Palestine stuff into the classrooms
Yeah.
and getting that into the curricula. There's in Washington once a year, there's a social justice teaching conference. And one of the 2 years in a row, one of the like a couple main features of that conference has been how to teach Palestine.
Yeah.
So it is entering the schools, and we do have, and school board positions are extremely important. And we don't, like, my kids are in private school. What do I know about school boards? But like, I have to pay attention to that too. Or if you don't
Yeah.
have kids, you still have to pay attention to it.
I mean, I come from a family of teachers. I care deeply about the public schools, but yeah, I mean, parents are coming to me and saying, which of the schools, like if we send our daughter to this high school, is that kind of okay? And I'm saying, yeah, I kind of vouch for that principal. Ooh, this one, I mean, if you can afford private. And I hate that. Like, my grandmother was a public school teacher for her entire career. I don't want to be recommending people choose private schools, but in Portland, it really is like down to the neighborhoods at this point. My neighborhood, we've got a great high school. I could recommend that to anybody. I'm really proud of that. But cross the river, a little into Southeast, I don't know. I don't know that I'm comfortable recommending that school. With the Social Justice Teachers Conference, we just hosted that this year. So the Seattle teachers came down. And I mean, one of the presentations was, so we failed at kicking the ADL out of the classroom. Here's our next steps, because we're definitely going to do that. And you send screenshots of this to sensible parents and they go, like, Max, I'm struggling to even believe that that's true, right?
Exactly.
Like, I know you sent me the screenshots. I know it's real, but like, this seems fictitious.
It can't possibly be.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's going back to the state senator that I was talking to about ethnic studies. I got off on my own tangent, but after 30, 45 minutes, he literally just said to me, I gotta go. Like, he was like tired from, like, he's like, he couldn't process it. And I had another, state legislator, call me after reading some of my ethnic studies pieces. And she was like, I don't understand. I just thought it was social studies. Like, how did this happen? I'm like, you voted for it.
Yeah.
You supported it. You were the head of the education committee and you were all on board. Now you're asking me what it is? You should have seen this.
No, they skimmed it. I mean, listen, I will take screenshots of these programs and send them to the most progressive parents I know and get back these shocked emojis where people go, whoa, that can't be the curriculum. And I go, yeah. I mean, like, I'm forwarding you a PDF from the teachers union, right? Like, this is not, it's, again, to the Mamdani clips, it's not hidden. It's just, to your point, it's exhausting. There's so much of it. Like, if people saw my relational database that I had to build to link all these things, it's impossible when you look at the wall of all of it. And it's, again, I sort of had no choice, right? Like, but that's the issue with bringing the Jewishness into all of these things, is you have to, like, ask somebody who has an out. They have a way they can just turn it off. They can just go back to their evening, watch the, Seahawks game. And you have to ask them to go, no, but I need 15 minutes more of your time because I need to explain the relationship between local progress and the IWW. Yeah.
No, it's overwhelming. I heard once that children need to eat like a food they don't like 12 times in order to like be able to be okay. Like broccoli, you have to have like 12 times. I don't know if this is true. I heard from a doctor. I don't know if it's true though. But it's like this. You have to give these like droplets of information until they
Yeah.
They can be like, oh, or something has to happen to them. They have to see it. And you have to
Yeah.
kind of just wait and just keep on reporting
Yes.
it.
Yeah. That's it. That's what we got to
Yeah,
do. I will say, if we may end on a happy note or a
do it.
hopeful, maybe not happy, hopeful note, there's a letter of like over 1,000, over 1,200 rabbis condemning JVP and Zohar Mamdani's rhetoric. We've got the Jewish Federation in Portland fighting back against the city councilors. I'm I'm seeing some straws break some camels' backs. I don't know. I'm not giving up hope.
Yeah, here in Seattle, we have these two packs that have started to say like, "Hey, we need to leverage we need to have a voice here." And I don't want to say power. I think that's a little too strong. But like, we need to harness our values,
Yes.
and say like, we're not going to be okay with it. We can't just keep having um interfaith dialogues. We can't just keep having discussions about this. Like, we have to really we have to vote with our hearts and souls, not
Yeah.
that we have to put our values for it on the ballot. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you, Max.
Thank you.
Always fun that this is our second conversation, and I think we'll probably have another one in the coming year because we have more elections, and I'm
Yeah.
sure something will come up where Seattle and Portland will really need to you know
Yeah.
have a chat.
Yeah. I think
Um,
so.
Seattle voting is on Tuesday. Don't mail your ballot. I just read that there's some sort of delay possibly, so bring it to a ballot box. And if you need Jewish voters guides, and again, I'm not endorsing any candidates, but if you need guidance and you want to look and see, even if you want to look at it to see what you don't want to do, we have 3 guides in Seattle now, and you can go check out my post from last week, who choose your vote for on November 4th, and check out Recalibrate Portland for all the drama going on in Portland with the DSA,
Yeah.
and just pay attention to what's going on. So with that, go Seahawks.
Go Seahawks.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
Max. Bye, everybody.
Bye.